Welcome to the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. I'm Asif Badi. Some interesting news. Whether you like it or not, whether you're a fan of him or not, Nick Sirianni is still the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And after the debacle that we saw against Tampa Bay, some of us may find it shocking that Nick Sirianni is here to stay. Now, to be fair to Nick Sirianni, earlier on in the season, I was a big defender of him, and I always felt that he got a bad rap. But as the season continued, my tune changed, seeing how the team just didn't respond to anything that was going on with the Eagles, passing game, etc., etc. We all know the deal here. But he's here to stay. After meeting with Jeffery, Laurie, and Howie Roseman, the organization decided, let's give Nick Sirianni a little bit more time to right the ship. And you know what? In all things, in all fairness, it's a fair thing to do. He has taken us to the playoffs 3 straight years, a Super Bowl appearance, and a down year for us was an 11-win season, albeit the collapse. But the stipulation is that there has to be massive changes on the coaching staff. That was the deal with Jeffery, Laurie, and Howie Roseman. And not only that, Nick Sirianni is also entering the 4th year of a 5-year contract with the Eagles. So most likely he's going to finish out his contract, and we'll see what they do from there after that. Now, the question now becomes, was this a mistake for Nick Sirianni to be retained? And let's just assume that it wasn't. Who are the coordinators that you need to bring in? Who is going to be the offensive coordinator for the Eagles? But the question right now for me is whether or not this was a mistake. And, depending on who you ask and depending on who you listen to, you're going to get a lot of mixed results. And your opinion can be swayed any which way you listen to, right? So there's a lot of people in Eagles media, most of the people in Eagles media, who really just had enough of Nick Sirianni and want him gone. They want nothing to do with the guy and believe that his time in Philly has come to a close. And there's other people in Eagles media who believe that, hey, this is really just the coordinator's fault. The play calling was terrible. But as far as managing and organizing a culture and a team, there really wasn't much wrong with what Sirianni has done throughout his tenure. Now, this year, the collapse is something totally different. And a lot of players alluded to it. Really, Jalen Hurts alluded to it in one of his press conferences interviews where he talks about there's a lot of stuff that's going on that none of you know about. We need more commitment from some guys, all that, all the cliches and all the stuff that he was talking about. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the organization right now. And to me, Nick Sirianni, I shouldn't say Sirianni. When you're a head coach, when you are a head coach of a football team, you are the CEO, essentially, of the organization. You are the head of the snake. You are the one that sets the tone in the building, that sets the tone in the locker room, and kind of sets the standard of what's going to fly and what's not. And Nick Sirianni, I don't care that he's braggadocious and bombastic and, has that, high energetic personality on the sidelines. I can give 2 shits about that. If that's who you are, that's who you are. Just don't refrain from being you. And to me, as the season waned and as times got tougher, he started to wane from who he was. If that's who you are internally, as just this energetic, rah, screaming your face, the antics on the sideline, continue to be that. Don't go back to your little cocoon and shrivel up like a freaking raisin like a grape or a raisin in the sun. Don't do that, because that's the reason guys will get fired. And that's the reason why Doug Peterson not only got fired, but was really let out of town. That's the reason Chip Kelly was let out of town. That's the reason some of these guys in the NFL get ousted from their job, is they refrain from who they are. And to me, as the season waned on, Nick Sirianni refrained from who he was. So that's one thing that I found to be an issue. Another thing that I found to be an issue with Nick Sirianni and why ultimately, this could potentially be a mistake is when the times got tough in the 6-game slide, you saw what teams were trying to do to the Philadelphia Eagles offense. And they started playing a little bit more zone. They started to blitz a little bit more and tried to get pressure on Jalen Hurts, get the ball out of his hands quickly, and all that stuff. Now, that's all well and good for defenses, but you need to have an answer. You need to have an answer for the blitz. And you need to have better designs to get some of these guys open. You can't expect your talent just to beat everybody every single time. This is the NFL. Everybody can play on the opposite side of the field. Everyone can play in this league. You're only a select few group of people who play football for a living. These guys get paid too. All the cliches about professionals. They can bust your ass too at any given moment. And when you're a team that has not only poor design where you're reliant on talent to get open, but also, when it's clear you don't have an answer to the question on a test via the blitz, via just a flow, an identity, teams are going to attack that. Wink Martindale, we all know. Jeff Saturday likes to say it on ESPN. As soon as you get off the bus, he's going to blitz you. Todd Bowles, as soon as you get off the bus, he's going to blitz you. And time after time after time again, the Philadelphia Eagles came into games with a lack of preparation and had no idea how to handle the blitz. No clue. The play designs, the checks that he makes, that Jalen Hurts makes at the line for when he sees a blitz. It's awful. It's 4 vertical routes, and no one runs it right. No one looks at the QB, and to me, that's coaching. Players got to know better. You got to have some self-awareness on the football field. It's football. You've played it all your life. Know how to deal with a blitz, or know that you got to look at the QB if the ball's going to come out hot. But again, they were too reliant on talent as opposed to making things easier for their talent to thrive. That, to me, is a reflection on coaching. Now, you could blame play calling for that, but Nick Sirianni, like I said, if you're the CEO, if you're the boss, you got to take some culpability in that. And yes, it comes down to player execution as well. But again, that's a whole different discussion. And the other thing to me, despite some of the reports about the veterans and how they feel about Nick Sirianni, in that Monday night game against Tampa Bay, they looked lethargic. They looked like they quit. They looked like they gave up. And you could tell the offense was just not jiving with what was happening and what the play calls were in the game. They didn't feel like they came into this game with an identity. They didn't feel or look like a team that was ready to play a playoff game. Of all the games of the year, that's the one game you decide to lay one of your worst performances out there? To me, if you're Nick Sirianni and you're claimed to be a rah-rah guy, and you're not necessarily an X's and O's guy because you're not calling plays, you're not necessarily, getting in the lab with the QB and working with them intimately, you're organizing and, operating the team as a whole. It's your job to be a leader of men and get these guys to play. And it looked like none of those guys on the offensive side of the ball, outside of a handful like Devontae Smith and, like Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey, all the offensive linemen came ready to play. But outside of that, everybody just looked sluggish, lethargic, done with it. That can't be all on Brian Johnson. That can't be all on Matt Patricia and Sean Desai. Nick Sirianni's got to take the bulk of that too. And to me, if it even looks like there is a semblance of this team not going out there to play hard for not only the city, but for Nick Sirianni, you got a big problem on your hands. And you can even tell after the game, Jalen Hurts, when you asked him about his faith in Nick Sirianni, hell, he didn't really say a vote of confidence for the guy. It was an odd response. He said, I have confidence with everybody in this locker room and this organization. Now, you could say that, okay, that includes Nick Sirianni too. But when you're asked specifically about Nick Sirianni and you avoid answering that specifically with Nick Sirianni, to me, you got a bit of an issue on your hands. Whether or not it's Jalen Hurts and just upset that he just lost the game or whatever it is, you got an issue if there's a disconnect between your head coach and your QB. That's a big problem. That will destroy and divide teams. It destroyed the greatest dynasty in football that we've ever seen in Belichick and Brady. If it could destroy that, it could destroy anything else in the NFL. If you asked Patrick Mahomes, does he have confidence in Andy Reid? Now, again, Nick Sirianni's not Andy Reid. I get it. You'll get my point here. I have the utmost confidence in Andy Reid. If Purdy was asked about Shanahan, or any Niner was asked about Shanahan, they'll tell you the same thing. What about Sean McVay and the Rams? They'll say Sean McVay's our guy. We'll go to bat for him. Hell, in Dallas, when they ask about Mike McCarthy, you'll hear their quarterback, Dak, will say, Mike McCarthy's our guy. We have full support and confidence in him. You didn't get that from Jalen Hurts. And yes, while other leaders and other veterans on the team have full faith in Sirianni and claim he's a winner like Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce, proof is in the pudding. While, yes, you're winning games, how do you look winning games? How did you look the last time we saw you on the field? And you guys looked putrid. You guys looked unprepared. You guys looked not motivated. To me, that's a reflection of coaching. And for Howie Roseman and Jeffery Laurie to give Nick Sirianni another year, while it's fair due to his results, it's also taking a very, very big chance because you only have a small window with this rendition of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, yes, we're going to get younger on the defensive side of the ball as the offseason continues. You got the draft. You got some free agency. There's not a lot of guys who are going to be free agents for Philadelphia. So you could do it. So you can keep most of this roster intact. But boy, oh boy, next year, we probably have an easier schedule. It's got to look better than what we saw for a month and a half. It has to. Or else this is going to go down as one of the worst debacles in NFL history. As this past season was one of the greatest collapses, if not the greatest collapse, we have seen in modern history of the NFL. Going from 10-1 and finishing the season at 11-6. That's unheard of. And quite frankly, Nick Sirianni was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles during that time. So, I trust Howie. I trust Jeffery Laurie. Let's see what Nick Sirianni can do. Since he is going to be our head coach, I am going to embrace it. And hopefully, he's able to bring in some good hires as OCs. Because there's a lot of guys out there who he could bring in to be potential offensive coordinators. He could bring in a guy like, popular name, Shane Waldron, who coached Seattle's offense with Geno Smith and Russell Wilson, resurrected Geno Smith's career. That wouldn't be a bad option. There's another guy, Josh McDaniels, who knows if Bill Belichick will bring him back. Maybe he brings Bill O'Brien with him. If Josh McDaniels is on the market and he's willing to coach Jalen Hurts, That could be a positive because no one's going to take that freaking guy, that damn snake, to be a head coach. So maybe that wouldn't be a bad option either. Another guy, Eric Bieniemy, is out there in the market. That name's been thrown around as a potential play caller for the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe might be able to work the middle of the field, worked with the Chiefs the last couple of years, and ever since Eric Bieniemy left, their offense has not necessarily looked the same or looked as dynamic, so he has a play in that as well. Another guy, Zach Robinson, is the quarterback coach for the Rams. Another guy, Chad O'Shea, is the Browns pass game coordinator. There's a lot of guys out here. Kellen Moore is out here. There's a lot of coordinators out here who are really, really quality, who could potentially bring life to this Philadelphia Eagles offense. It's really up to Sirianni who he decides to bring in, because whatever's going on with Brian Johnson, Matt Patricia, and Sean Desai, it's officially done this offseason, and we're going to have to answer some questions about this football team come the new season. So it should be a very, very interesting offseason for Philadelphia. And if you agree, and if you know anybody or any coordinator that you think would fit with Philadelphia, write it in the comments section below. Shoot this video a thumbs like if you're a supporter of the Birds and the Midnight Green. And also check us out on Instagram at the Riding the Bench Podcast with a K instead of C in the word podcast. And subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever audio platform you use to listen to podcasts on the radio. Check us out. We are most likely there. On that note, I got nothing else to say. Please, we will see you back here next time at the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast.